Creating a full demo of this has turned out to be quite a challenge. There's so much going on that this has ended up being my longest ever video by far. And that's after I've edited a load of stuff out. I've had one of these for over 9 months now, and I've already shown it emulating a Prophet VS. I've played it next to an original PPG. I've demoed it in MPE mode with a Roley. I've made classic analog pads with it, as well as shown how to make more complex pads. I've made the classic Gary Newman Vox Humana tone on it, and I've recently been playing with samples. So I think I know it well enough by now to put this together. It's about time, to be frank. And I'm playing some lovely chilled out pads from this to get you in the mood to sit back, relax, and take it all in. But if I spoke at this pace all the way through, it would be even longer. So get prepared for a change of gear as we head straight in and look at the interface and how it all works. Oh yeah! Most things are pretty much knob per function, but there's so much in here. You do rely on the screen and the contextual knobs and buttons here for when you program it in depth, really. When you turn a knob or hit a button, it jumps straight to the relevant page. So hit the filter envelope, it opens the filter envelope. And hitting the LFO, for example, then we go to the LFO page. We actually duplicate a lot of what we've got here. So we've got the amount, the wave shape, destination. Got a delay there as well. So we've moved on to the miscellaneous page. So there's a couple of pages there. We go to the amp envelope. We've got attack, decay, sustain, and release. But then we've got miscellaneous page where we've got the delay. So that's why we're using these buttons, or these knobs at the top, I should say, exponential or PPG mode. And the same goes for everything else. Unison, for example, we go into unison. Sequence, we go into sequence. There's a global menu and a miscellaneous menu we can jump straight to as well. The global menu, it's got all the things that you might expect in a global menu, like LED brightness, calibrating the wheels, MIDI settings, import, export, that sort of stuff. It's got MIDI MPE mode, important to see there. It does work with MPE. I've played this with the Roley Seaboard Rise 2, is it? And to do things like import wavetables, you've got a USB on the back, and this shows up as a hard drive on your computer, and then you just drop your wavetables into the wavetable folder, and there's folders for audio, firmware, programs, and the waves. Have I got anything in there at the minute? I've not got anything in there at the minute, but yeah, you can save everything to your computer, and we've even got, where is it? Export device image, so you can dump the whole thing onto the drive. And I think I need to give a special shout out to this paint job, which is absolutely lovely. It's got subtle little metallic flecks in there, which give a nice little sparkle when the light hits it just right. It's not overdone. It's not like shiny and flashy like a disco ball, but it's just really nice. It's got that sort of 1980s BMX or Datsun sort of feel. It's quite unique in the synth world, I think. Then we have the miscellaneous menu, and this is pair patch settings, like the output routines for the different voices. Envelope type we've seen with the envelope, but we've got circuit drift on this. So got circuit drift. If we turn that up, we can hear things going all wobbly, and that affects the tuning. It affects the tuning of the filters, and I think it affects the envelopes as well. You can hear everything's gone a little bit wonky, and it does sound like an old machine. So it does do that analog stuff as well. What else have we got in here? Pitch bend destinations. MPE, Y configuration, velocity strength. So yeah, these settings are all pair patch. We've got a metronome for the sequencer. And then we've got the velocity strength, pressure curve, glide modes, and stuff like that. So, And I think that covers just about everything. It's all quite self-explanatory, to be honest. There's nothing really difficult to get your head around. So let's dig into the sound engines. And as usual, I will start off by taking a look at what we've got here in the oscillators. And these are a little bit more complex than most, as we've effectively got a few modes in here. If we go to oscillator 1, like I said, we've got the PPG style. That's these P waves here, 128 sample 8-bit ones. Then we come to the user wavetables. We've got 64 of these user wavetables. It's got 48 user wavetables in when it comes from the factory, and you can add another 16 of your own. Of course, you can wipe over the 48 that are in here. On this, I'm only showing up to 52 because I've only got 52 saved in there. Then we come to the analog wavetables. The analog wavetables are the sawtooth, square, triangle, and sine. And then we've got super saw and noise, different types of noise as well. And then we come to the samples. So the difference between these is quite cool. The user waves, these sort of high res ones, these high fidelity ones. If we go into the wave, let's just find something nice and simple looking. I mean, these are really pristine. Lovely, crisp and clear. Let's find a simpler one just to try and show you that there's no alias and it's easy to hear when you've got a simple waveform. Let's look at these down in there. Down there, they look nice and simple. If we zoom in, we can see them much more clearly. Beautiful. Oops. Go right to the low end. Not that low, maybe. So as I say, pristine, but if we come to let's go to the PPG style ones, the 8-bit ones. I will load in one that I know has got a lovely bit of digital crunch, and that is this one from my VS. But you get real crunchy aliasing. Some inharmonic stuff, and then down at the low end, we get that little buzz that you can hear there. And that's your imaging effect. So maybe actually let's take a look at the PPG style waves first. So all of these wavetables in the P section are from the PPG. They're not named, as in the PPG. They didn't have names. They were just labeled 0 to 30, 32, was it, in the PPG? Although the names are pretty well known now. They are online, so you could go in and name them yourself. In the global menu, there's a rename wavetable setting. So yeah, each of these are 8-bit. If we go into them, hit wave, move through it. And at the end, on each of them, we have these analog style waveforms. So if we play this high up, we should get aliasing. You can hear it there. And low down, you get that imaging again. And what the imaging is, if you think that these are sampled at 128 samples long, I have done a whole video explaining this when I did my Prophet VS versus the third wave, so do check that out. I've got little graphs and that in there to make it more obvious. But essentially, if you're playing something, a note that's only got 128 samples in it, that's up here somewhere. If you play something down there, you will need 512 samples, 1,024 samples, 2,048 samples. So what are those samples going to be? Well, they're just going to be, on the originals at least, they were just a repeat of the other samples, which means that you end up with a stepped wave. In fact, let's look at it on the oscilloscope. You can see the steps in that waveform, and that's because it's just extending each sample 5 times to get 5 octaves lower. But that's actually harmonic, because it changes with the wave, it changes with the note. So if we go to this one where you can hear it a little bit better. those harmonics changing with the note, as I say. So that's just a lovely little thing that the original PPGs did, all those 80s synths. But you might not want that. You might want it to sound smoother. If we hit this Waveflow button, we've got 3 options here. Use the upper wavetable, waveform smoothing, and wavetable smoothing. Use the upper wavetable's really interesting. I'll show that in a second, but these are easier to show. So the waveform smoothing, let's hit that up to turn it on. It's now smoothed out that imaging. So it's interpolated what should be between sample 1 and sample 2, not just put a straight line in, it's actually smoothed it out. And if we turn it off, you can hear it's much smoother with the waveform smoothing on. That's why it's called smoothing. Wavetable smoothing is interesting. If we turn that on as well, let's go into the wave itself. Let's have a look at what we've got here. Let's go into the proper VS ones because they change dramatically between each of the waves. Because it's not actually a wavetable of VS, it's just lots of different waves. Move through these. So let's modulate through them with the LFO. So LFO 1, destination, wave offset. Let's do it nice and slow. Go back into the wave flow. So wavetable smoothing and waveform smoothing are now off. If I put wavetable smoothing on, it's much smoother between the different waveforms. So you can have old school, no smoothing, or a much more modern and smoother sounding wavetable smoothing. And then finally on the Waveflow section, we've got this use of the upper wavetable. The PPG, the original PPG, you could only use a single wavetable for both oscillators. So you had the 30 different wavetables, I think it was, plus you had this additional one. If you modulated past the end of the wavetable you were using, it would then modulate into the upper wavetable. And if we take a look at the waves, let's go into here. So at the end of each of these, we've got, as I say, the sawtooth and the square on all of them. So you can modulate into that, or you can play it if you've got upper wavetable on. You turn it off. It's off now. It's sort of getting stuck at the end there where it's not modulating any further, but if we turn this on, you can hear it's going through that second wavetable. And if we take a look at this, so we'll modulate through this one and it'll modulate into this one, much more complex one. So from the square into this sort of sinusoidal, and lots of complex thing, back up to the square and the sine on this one of the square and the sawtooth on that one, then back down again. Just watch that oscilloscope. There's the square, the sinusoidal complex, up to its little sawtooth, and then back down to the sinusoidal, through the sawtooth and square to the pulse width modulation of this one. And it doesn't matter which one you use, it will always modulate up into that P30. So we'll use this one, which has lots of sawtooths. There you go. And then it goes into that sinusoidal one, which was P30. So this is a real peculiarity of the PPG that this is giving us. And it gives you, although it sounds like a glitch there, it can be thought of as a nice little digital echo if you play a note. So you just increase the rate of that a bit more. that like a digital ghost? Other things that you want to look out for if you do want to replicate the PPG. If we go to miscellaneous, we've got reverse key to waves on. The PPG itself, when you had modulation sort of key follow, and it would follow the wave shape or the wavetable through the keyboard, it actually does it in reverse. So the lower notes are the higher parts of the wavetable, the higher notes are the lower parts. So it's got that little detail as well. But the manual itself has got 5 pages on how to do this. Well, it's basically all this sort of stuff I'm showing you here. But just to make sure that you get it right if you want to replicate any of the original tones. Okay, let's take a look at the user wavetables now. These are the high fidelity ones. So as we saw earlier, these are much smoother. Really nice complex things in here. This is just modulating through them using that LFO if we turn that off. Let's modulate through them with the mod wheel. If we hold source, we can put it from note number, velocity and the like, or just wiggle whatever you like. But we'll use the mod wheel for now, and our destination will be the wave offset. We'll turn that up. So, a bit more. Let's set the wave onto 1 to start, shall we? Let's just turn that modulation amount down a bit now. Lovely and crisp. Let's try another. This is quite cool, this one. It's called Groove Synthesis, and if we go to program, is it B141 or 42? Funky. So that's modulating through that wavetable, which is obviously somebody saying groove synthesis, modulating using the wave envelope, and we can see there between points 2 and 3 is where we're moving through it. So if we change the time of 2, is it? No, time of 3. We can change the speed we move through that. I think I tried that myself using Prince again. He'd be turning in his grave if he heard what I was doing to his voice in this. Where is it? Oh, so I can't find it. I don't think I recorded it actually as a sound in itself. I think I just recorded it as an oscillator. So if we go, or a wavetable, so if we go into the wavetables, here it is. Is this it? There we go. And we'll find another wavetable I made. This is the Pittsburgh Modular Tiger. And that's its wave folding oscillator. On the sine, this is the Analog Solutions Maximus. So a chord from the Analog Solutions Maximus. Then stick a little bit of drift on there as well, because it is a big analog beast. Turn the velocity off, put it envelope amount on full. But I've made a fair few of them. I'll stick a few for free up on my website. I'll stick a link in the description. Other ones I made whilst making this demo, Prophet 6. But going back to the actual ones that are in here, let's take a look, like Buchla 259 DMX7, whatever that means. Well, I'm assuming it means it's from a Buchla system. Bit of wave folding going on there as well. And while we're in this section, maybe I should mention the Wave Surfer knob. Let's find a patch that likes the Wave Surfer. And what that's doing is basically twisting all these three knobs at the same time. Wave smoothing on. So I've had loads of fun making these. You can do it in a number of different ways. You can just record audio in. You hit this Make Waves button, record audio in, record something from a maximum of 20 seconds. Shorter is better. It will try and evaluate the pitch. And you would just this wave sensitivity knob to get the results you want. But generally, I think I've left it on about 10 where it is at the start, and it seems to work most of the time. Sometimes it doesn't. It's a little bit hit and miss, but most of the time it works fine. So that's probably the easiest way to do it. The other way to do it is to import Serum wavetables. Again, you use the filing system, you drop the wavetables onto the USB drive, or you can do it with an audio file, just drop an audio file onto the USB drive. But just remember, it needs to be a 96 kilohertz mono WAV. And I found it's best if you play something between F and F sharp really low on the keyboard, because that gives you 1024 samples, which is what this uses. So something down there. But the easiest way for me, I found, is just because I've already got a workflow doing it, I've got a video showing you how to do it as well, is using Serum. And this will just import Serum wavetables. We're going to global. Read wavemaker file. Sine triangle. So this is another one from my Tiger. Okay. So that's what I've played, about 6 seconds long, I think it is. Was it 3 seconds long, that one? And I just twist the knob, play it for 3 seconds, put it into Serum, chop the ends off it, and this pops out. Make table, building the wavetable. So that is now in that WM wavetable I showed earlier. So if we go into the wavetable on this, final wavetable. Go back into Make Waves, save it. Takes a couple of seconds to save things. So if we go to the wavetable now, that should be in there. 53. There we go. Beautiful. There is actually a fourth option, and that's to import PPG style waveforms. So they're 128 samples long. It recognizes it because they're only about 8,000 samples long in total, and it will save that under the P wavetables. So I think that's all on those oscillators. Next ones are the analog waves. As I say, we've got sawtooth, square, triangle, sine, super saw, white noise, pink noise, red noise, white noise, blue noise, and violet noise. Let's take a look at the sawtooth first. That's a sawtooth. But we've got this wave offset, which is a pulse width. So You'll notice you don't get a wave display on the analog waveforms. To the offset. Modulate that with the LFO. PWM with the sawtooth. Do that on something like the Juno 2. So it's really simple to get analog style tones. It does have an analog filter after all. So that's the sawtooth. Move over to the square. Let's take the LFO off for now. LFO on. So again, big analog sounds. Again, let's put a little bit of circuit drift on. Let's give it a little bit of a flow. Just trying to give a flavor of what the whole thing does. The next is the triangle. Let's take the LFO off. And then we can modulate that as well. Next up then is the sine, and the pulse width on this basically changes the amplitude of the wave as far as I can tell. Whoops. So modulating that. What's interesting with this LFO actually is that we can go way into audio rates. That's AM. Amplitude modulation in FM rates. And I haven't shown you yet that actually we do have frequency modulation on this as well. If we go to the miscellaneous settings of Oscillator 1, we've got linear FM amount, and that's from Oscillator 2. Oscillator 2 is modulated by Oscillator 3, and Oscillator 3 is modulated by Oscillator 1. So we get an FM. So you can do all that analogy style stuff. So that's FM of the pitch. We were FM in the wave shape before with the LFO. Let's modulate the wave shape with that. So just to see really. So we go to source. We'll go to Oscillator 2. Destination will be the wave offset. Turn that up. So now this will be modulating the amplitude of Oscillator 1. Let's go and turn the FM amount down. Just having a play really. I don't think I've heard it do this before. Cool. So let's go back into the sources and the destinations in the mod matrix. So that's modulating the amplitude of Oscillator 1 using the wave offset. Anyway, let's stop all that nonsense, but that's the analogness of it. Turn it down to 0. What other waves do we have in here? We have the super saw. So that's without any modulation. Great. What happens when we play with the wave offset? That speeds it up. Slows it down, I should say. It's at 0.5 pulse width. It's great, that, isn't it? And that's about 3 tweaks from a really standard, it's not the initial patch, but a really standard patch. We've also got sync on these as well. So let's sync oscillator 1 to oscillator 2, oscillator 1, miscellaneous, sync on. And let's modulate oscillator 1's pitch with, I don't know, envelope 3. So go to envelope 3, and we're going to modulate the pitch, destination, oscillator 1 frequency, amount, we're going to whack that up. And we're going to do something like that. Not getting a massive amount of modulation from that alone, but we can stack that in the modulation settings. So if we go to the source, envelope 3, destination pitch, and he remembers to use this knob again. Hit unison, voices 1. Let's keep it on 9 voices, or 8 voices to be like a standard synth. Detune. Set some resonance. Let's add some envelope to the filter. Back into unison. Let's whack up to 24 voices, shall we? We've also got chords on this, so let's turn this down a bit. Unison's also used for chords, so let's take that detune off. That easy. Let's take all this down as well, make it sound a bit nicer. So I feel like I've been talking about the oscillators for hours, but we've still got more to do because we've got the sampling oscillator as well. Oh, yeah. Sampling's accessed via the global menu. If we go to the global menu, and then we've got manage sample memory, which is where you start sampling, and then you've got manage multi-samples, because the samples themselves, you can have 8 on a single oscillator. If I go into this program I prepared earlier, if I can find it, this is it. If we go into global then, and I go to manage multi-samples, we've got sample S00. So that's basically sample oscillator 1. We've got 8 samples in there. I don't know if you can see that on the camera, but it's DMX kick, closed hat snare, open hat tom 1, tom 2, crash and clap. And they've been spread across the keyboard. Oh yeah, forgot, I made a little stupid track with this. So what we've got here, I've got the drum machine there, I've got that groove synthesis sample. I've got a little Gary Newman style Vox-Humana tone. And they've got a bass line. So samples, I think the Vox-Humana, is that an analog style tone? That's definitely a Wavetable, the groove synthesis, and I think that's the analog square as well. So yeah, 4 different parts. If I play what I did, please don't have a go at me at this because it was just messing about. Let's go into mode, go into the splits, and we'll turn off 4 and 3 for now. Whoops. Turn off 3, turn off 4, and play. Add 4, add the bass line. Just playing around, seeing how everything works. So yeah, you can use it a bit like a drum machine if you fancy. What was another little one I did? I did this, didn't I? Where is it? Got to be careful when I play this because I'll get copyright claims.
Oh, yeah.
I've got some samples at the bottom. And I've got in the center here, that's not a sample, that's a part I made, and so's the bass line. Going back into the samples themselves then, I will just initialize the patch, or let's go to another one, just in case I do something stupid. Initialize this patch. Wavetable, we will go into the samples again. And it's listed beat audio in here because I recorded that using the audio in. It's almost easier to do that because it's got to be a mono sample, so if you've got something in stereo, just a quick way of doing things, it works perfectly. So if we go into global, go into manage sample, or manage sample memory, and we go down to the beat. This is it recorded using the audio in. I have also used a file to bring it in as well. Just used the filing system on the USB. There's that beat test. So there's very little difference in that, if any at all. I've got one playing at 8-bit and one at 16-bit at the minute. If I go back into the sample memory, let's go into the audio in. Let's use that one again. Edit to 16-bit. We can change the bit depth to 12-bit or to 8-bit. There's not massive difference in 8-bit, 12-bit and 16-bit. It's in the high end that you notice, the top end that you notice things more than anything. And also you get a little bit of a higher noise floor on 8-bit as well. I think analog tapes like 6-bit, so just makes things a bit noisier and a little less clear. But you're not going to hear much difference just playing that beat there. But we do have 8-bit, 12-bit and 16-bit in there. And once you changed it from 16-bit to 12 to 8, it's non-destructive, so you can always come back to 16-bit. If we come back to the DMX program, okay, I just want to show you a few more of the options we've got in here. So manage the multi-samples, okay. So here's what I've got, the kick, closed, and the snare again. And if we come in, let's put the kick onto A. Is that A2, is it? So come back to the kick. That's the kick. We can loop stuff as well, and you can set loop points, start and end points. It's also got in there crossfades. But let's just play this for a second. So let's go to the set note. We'll assign it to this key here, minimum, maximum. Now the kick's there. So all pretty simple stuff. If we go back to that beat maybe, and then let's add a loop to that. Beat audio in. Let's loop it. Loop this selected to off there. On when the note's on. I mean, I've set that up as a sample originally already. You can go in, you've got the crossfade. Don't want the crossfade on there. Let's take that off. You heard like a little glitch there, didn't you? Because it doesn't need it. Perfect. Equal volume, equal power. But yeah, I've set this up so it didn't need a crossfade. So just a quick overview of the samples there. It will use samples. It's quite basic sample functionality, but you can loop, you can set the different volumes of them. You can't send them to different outputs because that's set in the multi-part. Well, you can't do it yet anyway. It's brand new. Update this. But it's not, you know, it's not a sampler, but it can use samples. So you can do little things like I've done with those drums. So actually, let's take a look at the sequencer now. If we come back to this DMX. Now we heard I've done stuff in there a minute ago, but if I take it off that and I go to pattern number 4, for example, don't think there's anything in there. No, nothing. Press record and play. There's your sequencer. Now it goes up to 32 measures, and in each of these we can have 24 patterns. We do have a song mode. I've not used the song mode, I have to admit. But just for doing little things like this, it's quite handy. If you want to clear anything though, so if I play that again, pattern number 4, and I wanted to clear the hi-hat, for example, I don't think you can. I'm not being able to, well, figure out a way to do that. If you clear the part, you clear it. That's the whole part. You can edit it to some extent. You can chop sections out. If we go into record mode and press play, you'll see this turns into erase. So let's record something in. Let's make it 2 measures long, shall we? So. Erase that. So you can carry on indefinitely chopping and changing, but you can't delete individual notes is what was really trying to get across there. It's really good for little sketches or doing things like that, or you might want to put a bass line in while you play the keys over the top, but it's not going to scare Ableton. You know, it's quite basic, but it's very handy and you can do full tracks on it. But I haven't mentioned that we do have parameter records, so we've basically got parameter locks on this. You can't go in and edit them per step, but you can tweak and it will record. So if I turn that on, I don't know what the limit is on this. I don't know if there is a limit or you can just do what you like. Let's put that on. Let's press play. Do something like this maybe. So really quite flexible. Cool little sequencer. We've got an arpeggiator as well. I've been talking for hours, it feels like, on this. Let's just have a little play with it, shall we? Put it on. an ARP. Let's move over to the multi-part then, shall we? A couple of people have asked me to dig into this a little bit deeper because it's been a bit confusing for them. Once you wrap your head around it, it's not, but I understand why it might be confusing until that point. So, what have we got here? Let's just single part. And we're editing that part because it's flashing. If we hit 2, 2 is now live, and we're editing 2 now. If we don't want to hear 1, turn it off. Just editing 2 still. If we want to listen to 1 and 2 and edit them both at the same time, hold mode and click on them, and that toggles whether you're editing them or not. So now I'm editing both. So just want to edit 1, so I want to turn 2 off. Well, I don't want to turn it off, I want to turn the editing off. So it's not flashing, it's still on, but not flashing. So if I turn the cutoff down now, I'm only turning it down on part 1. Part 2 still playing. Similarly, when you've got all 4 parts playing, so let's bring in part 3. I'm now editing part 3. Let's turn 1 and 2 off. So just listen to what 3 is. I'm only editing 3, so if I turn this down, that's only edited 3. If I turn 1 and 2 back on, the cutoff hasn't been knocked down on them. Now it has, on 1. But not on 2. So if I wanted to edit all 3 at the same time, mode, toggle that one on and toggle that one on. So now I'm editing all 3. When you hit mode, you get volume, pan and splits and things. And splits, I think, is where it's a bit more confusing until you understand what's happening. So there's the volumes. It's quite obvious. Pan. You get the idea. Splits, though, is where it gets a little bit more confusing. So let's go down to just 1 part. Into splits, we've only got 1 part. So let's add split. Split notes C#4 at the minute. Let's change that to whatever we want. So now we've got 1 part, 2 parts, but the multi-part lights work differently now. So part 1 and part 2 are still active because they're active on this. But 1 isn't lit. And what's lit there is what's active on split 2. So if I turn 3 on now, it will be active in split number 2. And so will 4. Turn those off again. So go back to split 1. I could have 1 and 4 on split 1. And I think that's what's confused a couple of people. Because it definitely confused me. Because I didn't read the manual, probably. We come back to this DMX patch. It was at 42. And we look at the splits on this. We can see we've got the 4 different ranges. C to G2. That's the drums. After that, we've got groove synthesis. And then from F4. But if I added, let's add the beats to 4, shall we? So when it plays up here, you'll be playing the beats or something as well, because actually, no, because the beats are confined to down there. In the sample oscillator. So let's add the groove synthesis to part 4. So groove synthesis was 2. That's the groove synthesis patch that we played earlier. So it can be confusing, and as you add them sometimes I've noticed it seems to put the splits in really weird places, but you just spin, spin, spin until you get to where you need it to be. And it's really nice for doing things like this. So this is the Prophet VS tone I made, but I've doubled it up, so it's like having two Prophet VS's, one in the left, one in the right. Go to the modes, part 1, part 2, pan. So spread a little bit left and a little bit right. Let's spread them a little bit more. You'll notice, I don't think I've mentioned this before, you can see the original values from the top there. Let's go back to 50. So you can just get beautiful, wonderful, big, wide pads. By creating a part and then copying it to part 2. And that's really simple as well. If we come back into the parts, copy from B27 part 1 to part 2. Copy, and it does it really simple. And you can split them all by MIDI. You can have different MIDI channels for each one. If we go to the global, we've got different MIDI channels for each of the different parts. MIDI multi-timbral mode on or off. So it does act like 4 separate synths, and obviously because you can send each of the parts to a different output, you know, you've got 4 synths going to 4 stereo tracks on your mixing desk. We've also got this nice detune you can do on the multi-part. So a really simple tone. That's just 2 sawtooths slightly detuned to have a bit of release. I'm going to copy that across to part 2, so we'll turn part 2 on, go into mode, parts, copy part 1 to part 2, okay. So now we've got 2 parts playing the same thing. We'll just separate them can a little bit, just because it sounds a bit nicer. And then if we come to this volume and tuning, we can detune the second part, and you can hear already, it gets nice and chorusy. And I'll edit 1 as well, so mode on 1. It's now the toggle, so both of them are being edited. That's before any chorus, so we throw a chorus on as well. Maybe try some reverb. Not bad, except for the dodgy chord at the end. It's beautiful sounding now though, isn't it? Could double it up even more. Should we try that? Let's put 3 and 4 on. Let's go into mode. Let's parts. Let's copy part 1 to part 3. Copy and copy part 2. Whoops. Now, there you go, part 2 to part 4, copy, and let's just do a bit more panning on them. Try that. And a little bit more detune. So they're playing the same there, don't want that. Can't have anything playing the same. Yeah. Even more detune. And this is the real beauty of stacking these oscillators. If we edit them all together so that when I play the cutoff, I'm playing them all. And as I've been playing these nice VS tones, I might as well talk about the wave envelope, because this is what I've been using to do that thing that the VS does. It's got the vector synthesis, so you've got 4 oscillators, A, B, C, and D, and then the little stick that you see in the corner moves from A, B, C, and D. And depending on where you have it, is basically the levels of each of those oscillators. So to move from oscillator 1, 2 to 3 to 4, for example, like we are on this patch, you'd have to make oscillator 1 loud, then it sort of crossfades over to oscillator 2, to oscillator 3, and oscillator 4. And that's what I'm using the wave envelope for. Wave envelope's got 6 stages. We only need 4 to do this. I think the Prophet VS has got 5, and you can loop them. You can do all that in the VS as well. So you really can copy what the VS does, but it's just a good way of showing you what the wave envelope does. If you want to see it versus the VS, do take a look at that video. I'll stick a link to that in the description as well. And if I load up another patch that actually modulates through them, this is a nice example of a patch that uses the wave envelopes on the waves themselves. That's on or off, so it directly modulates them once you've hit on. So we've got oscillator 1 and oscillator 3 all being modulated by the wave envelope. If we look at oscillator 1, you can see we're modulating through there. Let's turn the other oscillators down so we can hear what's happening here. Turn that off. We're not modulating through it. It's quite simple, really. What might be even more obvious is just to show you some of the looping functions. This patch here is really good for showing this, so if we play it, so if we put the looping point on, we're now looping between the start point of the loop and the release point. The release point, if we go into the graph, is 0.3 there, and we can change that back into the values. Miscellaneous, change that to 0.5, for example. We go back into the graph, we can see there. So it will be looping, but it's just taking its time. Let's turn time 4 and 5 down. So we can actually change the loop points and the end points. So really super flexible. This button turns it on for the waves themselves. You can turn that off and use these in the modulation. So if we go to the source, wave envelope 1 or wave envelope 2, wave envelope 3, and destination. So you can use them for whatever you like. And that's what I've been doing for the Prophet VS style tones. We've eventually got around to looking at the filters then. Normally do this a lot earlier, but there's so many interesting things to look at on this. The filters are probably the least surprising of the things we've got here. We've been listening to it as we've been playing along, but got a nice tone to that, hasn't it? When we turn the resonance up, we do lose bass like you'd expect on a 24 dB. But in the miscellaneous settings, we've got this resonance compensation setting, and that stops that from happening. Works really well. Yeah, it's a really nice tone to that. Listening to a single note, you get some nice, real nice low-end rumble. And off we go into infinity. Turn that up all the way. So that's peak resonance there. Let's try taking the compensation off to see if it gets any more resonant. It does. I'm looking at the difference between the fundamental and the resonance there. Then put that compensation on. So it makes it a lot wilder actually. And I did a demo of this versus my Juno 60 and I never noticed that. Bit naughty of me. You can get it much more resonant by leaving the resonance compensation off, but I prefer it for those pads and stuff. It just makes it a much smoother sound, I think. But with that off, that's a load sort of wilder than I was expecting, actually. You find things out when you do these demos because you look at absolutely everything. Yeah, I'm going to have to re-edit the Juno 60 bit. So when I said this is one of the least surprising or exciting bits, I was completely wrong, wasn't I? Because that surprised me. Let's try some tracking, shall we? Let's turn the level of the oscillator off. Go back into the filter, miscellaneous. When you've got this on about 64, I think it is, it's key tracking perfectly. There we go, so you can track, and you can track more than you need. So that's 2 octaves, not 1. Back down to 64, was it? 63. So cool. Nice. So yeah, big difference there. Another nice thing we have on this is the amount of envelope modulation you get from the filter. So if we the cutoff on 0, just modulate that a fair amount. There we go. We're getting the full range of that filter, nice and snappy. And I often think people think of an envelope as being snappy because you're getting more envelope modulation rather than it being an actually fast envelope. And this is very Rolandy, this sort of thing. Really nice sort of analogy tone there. We also have a saturation knob that you might have noticed. Simple sawtooth. It's doing all sorts of things. It's working. Making it more fluty sounding. Gives it some more weight, doesn't it? And then we've got the state variable filter. So let's come clean through the analog. We can actually turn the analog off in the global settings if we want to. But let's go to the state variable. It's a nice sounding thing. One thing I do notice is that I do have to play with the levels an awful lot when I'm playing with this because there's so many different options, I suppose. Then it goes from low pass to notch to high pass. So although it's resonant, it's not going to worry an MS-20 that high pass, is it? But it is nice to have it. Lots of more Oberheim style tones you can get using that, and then we've got bandpass as well. I do like a notch. And just let's listen to a single note on it as well, just to be thorough. Resonance up. So if we put the saturation on, I think the analog filter comes after the digital filter. So you can still saturate after the SEM. Even if everything's fully open. Obviously, I suppose. So there's thousands of tones in there, aren't there? For anyone that's still here, still listening, this is turning into a rather long demo. We'll take a look at the envelopes now. We've got 4 envelopes and they're all DADSR. That's delay, attack, decay, sustain, release. If we hit miscellaneous, there's the delay. Same for them all. On envelopes 3 and 4, we've got the destination and the amount knobs as well, because obviously the filters go through the filter envelope and everything goes through the amp envelope, so you don't have to set where they are, but you can use them to modulate other things if you want. But that's why we've got a few extra knobs around the bottom here. First thing I want to really show on these is the difference between the exponential and the PPG. So this is exponential. Nice and snappy. In fact, they're super snappy, these. But if we go to the PPG style, now you're either exponential or PPG on all of them. You don't get a choice of PPG on one and exponential on the other. That's how much longer the PPG shape takes to play. It's linear, not exponential, but everything just seems to take ages. I mean, you can make it snappier. But when you're programming stuff and you change from one to the other, all hell breaks loose sometimes. Or the release on. We've also got a repeat here. So even the looping envelopes go into FM territory, and that just shows how snappy they are. If we put that onto PPG, still snappy. So even though the longer, when you're doing a big pad or whatever else, you can still make them snappy on the PPG. I was just showing the difference between the settings on the exponential and the PPG. But the fact they've got a delay and they've got a loop-in mode and can go into FM territory, again, not your standard envelopes. Nothing on this feels standard, does it? Okay, finally, let's take a quick look at the effects. I should mention there's a compressor that'll limit the volume going into the effects, just in case things get overly loud. If you've got the level up on all 3 of these, it can distort a bit. But the effects themselves, we've got plenty in here. Delays, chorus, phaser, flanger, distortion, pedal, Leslie speaker, ring mod, super plate, concert hall, room, sim. So loads of bits in here. Let's take a very quick listen. If we go to, I don't know, let's try a delay, shall we? Let's add some feedback to that. Just showing you there that you've got sync as well. So we've got two main parameters for each of the effects, mix knob and the type there. If you've got the desktop version, you don't have this many knobs for all of them. I think you've got the on for both of them, and then you select which one you're editing, but everything's available via the contextual knobs as normal. And then we've got the additional miscellaneous section, which has got sync on for all these different effects. But these are good quality effects. Let's put a phaser on, shall we? Something like that. So we can go from really mad to really subtle. Distortion pedal's cool. Nice little effect for leads and stuff. If we go over to these reverbs, let's put the big super plate on. Let's add a load of time. Put the mix on about 50. So these are nice sounding effects. Let's go to the concert hall. So quite creative little bits you can do in there as well. And then ring mod. Good. So yeah, very cool, very useful, nice sounding effects. You can have 8 of them playing, so 2 on each of the parts, but there are a few limitations with the tape delay, the room or the hall reverb, and the Leslie speaker and the distortion. You can't have them on all 4. If you've got them on 1 and 3, you can't have them on 2 and 4. Or if you've got them on 2 and 4, you can't have them on 1 and 3. But actually, I've not come across the limitation yet because I've not absolutely maxed everything out. But I think I have actually maxed out what I'm going to say about this. I think I've looked at everything. So there you have it, the third wave from Groove Synthesis. Overall, a massively positive experience, so much so that I've now owned 2. I bought the desktop back in October it was. Loved it so much. When I saw this in Superbooth, I bought this one as well. So I've got to sell the other one because I can't keep both, can't afford to keep both. These are not cheap synths, are they? They are expensive, but there's a lot going on in here. It can't all be super positive though. To give a balanced review, there are a couple of little niggles I have with it, and it's mainly to do with the user interface. So if you go into the global settings, for example, and you go into manage the multi-samples, so we go into there and we're managing a multi-sample and we just want to edit any parameter, we get the new screen up for that parameter, which is a great way of seeing what's happening as you're normally jumping around things. But if you go back into global, you've got to then go back and find it again. So you find yourself, when you're programming and learning it, going into these menus and scrolling through a fair amount. So you know, twist that, now I've got to go back in and I've got to find it again. And the other one is if you hit Unison to go in and tweak with the Unison mode, you've just turned it on. And I might want to go in and increase the detune. I've just turned it off. It's a really minor thing because you can just turn it on again. But when you're fiddling around with it, it's just something to note that there's no sort of back button, as it were, to get you back to the main page, or there's no main menu really, so that you can find these things without having to push the button. But pushing the button is a really handy way of doing it. So if we go into the sequencer, for example, and twist the knob, we can change the tempo. But you just got to train yourself to just do a little wiggle and you're in there. So on the oscillators, for example, if you wiggle the wavetable back and forth, just one, and you know you're back to where you should be. I'm just trying to give a balanced review, I suppose, because I've spent over an hour, which is about 4 hours worth of recording, showing you all the really good, cool stuff. So as I say, just trying to be a bit balanced. That didn't stop me spending the money to buy the second one, did it? So that's how important that is. And as promised, coming up at the end, we've got the Juno 106 versus this. Not really versus, just me sort of showing that this can do similar style tones. And that's why I feel like this has really taken over from the Actus Virus I've got in the studio for covering everything. If there was one synth that you could have that would cover it as much as possible, it will be this. If I had to sell all my synths, I think this would be the one I kept, because it can get close to the Junos, can get close to the Profits, can get close to the Oberheims. It can cover an awful lot of bases, and of course, it's basically a PPG as well. So I hope you enjoyed that. I hope somebody stayed to the end, because it's taken ages to put this together, and I've got a lot of other videos featuring this on my YouTube channel as well, so do check those out. And do please subscribe, ring the bell, join me over on Patreon. This channel is funded by my affiliate links, my wonderful patrons and YouTube ads. Patrons get access to patches, samples, tutorials, all for the price of a lukewarm macchiato a month. And also do take a look at my starskycar.com website. Again, there's patches, there's samples, there's stuff to download, there's free stuff, there's stuff you can buy. And as I always say, maybe pick up some of the really cheaper little sample packs, because it all does help to support the channel. And I will stick some wavetables from this that I've made for the Maximus and the P6 and some of the Tiger ones up there as well for free. So do check that out. And thank you very much for staying to the very end. Here's those other little comparisons. Enjoy, and I'll see you next time.